homosexuals serving openly in the service. Mr. Connolly, are you for that or against it?
I have voted to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Our own experience, we've sadly discharged over 13,000 men and women in serving their country who would like to continue to serve their country, but for their orientation, they've lost their jobs and we've lost their talent. Our allies have proven that you can live side by side with people of a different sexual orientation without disruption. Germany, Canada, Israel, to wit.
Mr. Fimian, what's your view?
My dad was career military. He's dead now, deceased. But I would rely on the good judgment of our commanders. 90% of those in the military where unit cohesion is so vitally important are against it, for whatever reasons they have. And
what do you say to the argument made back ages ago that African Americans couldn't coexist with white people and they had to be segregated?
Yeah, listen, I mean, obviously that
is it not equivalent?
Should not have been the case. I think these are a little bit different. But look, I want to point something out I think is really important here. What matters to the voters right now are jobs, the economy, and spending. And Jerry Connolly has defined himself as a pragmatic moderate. Look, the voters are going to know about this.
But I'm sorry, I just want to make sure we got off on these social issues, got them all done as a kind of a TikTok, and I think you were going to go to the phones?
Yes.
Okay.
Here is John in Vienna, Virginia. John, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Oh, thanks, Kojo and Tom. I'm an undecided voter here in Fairfax, and I heard Mr. Fimian's recent comments that the tragedy at Virginia Tech could have been avoided if the students were, quote, packing heat. Frankly, I found that sentiment to be abhorrent, and I'd like to know what each of the candidates feels about closing the gun show loophole, and frankly, I don't want to hear any more double talk from Keith Fimian.
Well, listen, I misspoke.
The gun show loophole, for those who are unfamiliar with it, means that people who are selling guns at gun shows do not have to...
Or do all the paperwork.
Yes, do all of the paperwork necessary.
Listen,
what about the packing heat?
I misspoke when I said that. The question surprised me. It's the first and only time until today that it had been raised on the campaign the entire time I've been doing this. And I misspoke. What I meant was if there was an armed security guard at Virginia Tech, the assailant may have thought twice. It may have prevented it. I don't know if it would have or not. But my words were very poorly chosen, and I apologize for that.
Should students have guns?
No, certainly not. I definitely agree students should not, nor should criminals, nor the mentally ill, nor domestic abusers. And I think there's a fine line here we can strike where our Second Amendment rights can be preserved, but guns are kept out of the hands of our children and criminals.
What about packing heat, Mr. Connolly?
Well, I think this is an insight into the extreme views of my opponent that he's trying to mask in this campaign, as he did 2 years ago, and I don't think it's going to fool voters. First of all, there were security guards on campus, and they did have guns. So the idea that what he was talking about was really security guards, too bad they didn't have guns, is simply not true. He clearly referred to students, and as you indicated, Tom, the reference was packing heat. He's trying to have it both ways, placating certain extreme elements. Let me finish. Certainly placating extreme elements in his base, but then when he gets caught at it, trying to retreat from that position.
Listen, I'm not trying to placate anyone, Kojo.
I am going to finish. And then you can have your time. While understanding that, of course, that's not the majority view in our district. My predecessor took a very reasonable point of view on guns and actually was part of a coalition to try to have reasonable solutions to protect the public while not infringing on Second Amendment.
Congressman, do you believe that you have the right in the Second Amendment to have a gun in your home?
Yes, I do.
And Mr. Fimian,
I agree with that. But look, I'm not trying to placate anyone. I answered a question of a reporter on television. I wasn't trying to placate anyone. I misspoke.
Don't blame television. That's my business.
By the way, I misspoke. But listen,
he's blaming the reporter.
I am no extremist. Mr. Connolly, if any of the two of us is an extremist, based on this population handbook he wrote in 1974 that called for pulling health coverage from Americans and eliminating property rights.
Well, stay with guns for a second and go back to our phones. Here's Jose in Oakton, Virginia. Jose, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I would like to hear what their position, both candidates' position regarding the foreclosure mess we have. We have had 7 million foreclosures so far. Bankers expect to foreclose on 14 million American families in addition to the 7 million. I haven't heard anything from them regarding that, specifically about the frauds, the forgeries, the false affidavits, the fraud on the courts, and the families that are being evicted by parties that have no right to be foreclosing. Virginia is a non-judicial foreclosure state, meaning that they can lie, cheat, and steal without anybody saying anything. What is their position?
First you, Congressman Connolly.
I think that putting somebody out of their house ought to be the last resort, not the first resort. Frankly, I think a lot of financial and lending institutions have gone to that as the first resort, and as we've now seen, often, frankly, with faulty documentation. There are
What do you think should be done?
Well, I spend a lot of time actually in my office intervening with financial institutions on behalf of people in their homes to try to get a renegotiation. There are a lot of people who are underwater through no fault of their own and have made a good faith effort to keep their commitments, and with a little bit of help, including the willingness of the lending institution to renegotiate, could stay in their home. That ought to be our first goal.
Foreclosure freeze?
But secondly, well, I don't know if I favor a full foreclosure freeze, but I do think moving forward, the public and the government have to have confidence in the documents you're relying on before you put someone out of their home. I also believe that we have to do a lot better job of making sure that some of the practices that led to the bubble in 2007 are ended. And we have passed some legislation to do that so that people aren't taking on an obligation that nobody in their right minds thinks they should or could.
Mr. Fimian.
Listen, the paperwork issue, we got to make sure that is straightened out, absolutely categorically. But look, the best program the government can implement is creating a job. We need these people to have economic opportunities so they can move forward. Job creation is the key to doing that. Jerry Connolly has never created a job. I've created hundreds of them from scratch. And again, this idea of eliminating uncertainty, I can't overemphasize.
So you don't have a problem with the foreclosures?
No, I do. But the best way out of this mess we're in is making sure people have a job they can get if they lose their current job. That is not changing. We're stuck at unemployment around 10%.
But the question is, what would you do about foreclosures right now if you were elected?
Well, I would certainly make sure that there are no paperwork errors that lead to foreclosures that are unwarranted, because of this question about where we are in the chain of ownership. But I would do everything possible to make sure that people that foreclosed on only as a last resort. But again, finding a job is the key to not being foreclosed.